Excuse me, you're in the wrong section. First class is for paying customers only. Flight attendant Jessica Walsh's manicured fingers yanked the boarding pass from Zara Johnson's hands, deliberately tearing the corner. The rip echoed through the first-class cabin like a slap. Passengers looked up from their phones and magazines. A businessman in 2A stopped mid-sip of his champagne. The woman across the aisle clutched her pearls, her eyes darting between the confrontation and her lap. Zara sat perfectly still in seat 1B, her dark hands folded over a sleek laptop bag. The bag bore a subtle aviation industry logo that nobody noticed yet. Her boarding pass clearly displayed First Class, Seat 1B, despite the torn corner. "There must be some mistake," Zara said quietly. Jessica's smile was arctic. "No mistake. You don't belong here." Have you ever been publicly humiliated at 35,000 feet, only to discover the person demanding your removal actually worked for you? The captain's voice crackled through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be departing JFK in 25 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare for final boarding." Jessica Walsh straightened her Navy uniform, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes as she watched Zara Johnson examine the torn boarding pass. After 6 years with Transatlantic Airways, Jessica prided herself on maintaining cabin standards. "I need to see your credit card," Jessica announced loudly enough for surrounding passengers to hear. Sometimes people use stolen cards to upgrade illegally. Zara looked up from her seat 1B, her expression unreadable. "My boarding pass clearly shows first class." "Boarding passes can be altered," Jessica replied, crossing her arms. "It happens more often than you'd think, especially with certain passengers." The businessman in 2A shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the coded language. An elderly white woman in 1C pretended to read her magazine while listening intently. Devin Martinez, a 24-year-old travel blogger, had been documenting his flight experience when the confrontation began. His phone was already recording, Instagram Live activated with shaking fingers. The viewer count climbed. 89. 167. 234 people watching in real time. "Y'all are not going to believe what's happening on this transatlantic flight," Devin whispered into his phone. "The flight attendant is basically accusing this black woman of credit card fraud." Comments flooded his stream. "Call the captain! This is 2025, not 1955. What airline is this? Get her badge number." Jessica noticed Devin's phone and marched over, her heels clicking against the cabin floor. "Sir, filming is prohibited during boarding." "Actually," Devin replied, his voice steadier than he felt, "passengers can record in public areas unless it interferes with safety." "This is interfering with my duties," Jessica snapped. "Put it away or I'll have you removed." Zara finally stood, reaching into her leather briefcase. As she moved, a first-class boarding pass from another airline slipped partially out, Emirates, showing Platinum Elite status. The corner of a calendar notification was visible on her phone. "Board meeting, London Heathrow, Terminal 5. Nobody noticed except the overhead security camera recording silently. "Here's my credit card," Zara said, producing a black American Express card. The name Johnson, Zara, Corporate was clearly embossed in gold letters. Jessica snatched the card, holding it up to the light as if checking for counterfeits. "Corporate cards are often stolen too. I'll need additional verification." Karen Mitchell, the head flight attendant, emerged from the galley carrying passenger manifests. At 41, Karen had worked international routes for 12 years and knew how to handle difficult situations. "What's the problem here?" Karen asked, though her tone suggested she'd already chosen sides. "This passenger may have fraudulent documents," Jessica explained. "I'm following security protocols." "Security protocols?" Zara's voice remained calm, but something shifted in her posture. "Which specific protocol requires you to question a passenger's legitimate credit card?" Karen stepped closer, positioning herself between Zara and her seat. "Ma'am, we need to resolve this quickly. Other passengers are boarding." I'm not preventing anyone from boarding, Zara replied. I'm sitting in my assigned seat with valid documents. Devon's live stream had exploded. The viewer count reached 412, then 578. Comments streamed faster than he could track. Document this discrimination. Share this everywhere. At airline discrimination. Someone call corporate. The hashtag #transatlantic discrimination began trending among aviation enthusiasts and social justice accounts. 20 minutes to departure, the captain announced. Ground crew, please expedite final boarding procedures. Jessica grew bolder, emboldened by Karen's support and the lack of intervention from other passengers. You know, I've been doing this job for 6 years. I can spot people trying to sneak into first class from a mile away. She gestured toward Zara with barely concealed disdain. Designer knockoff clothes, expensive-looking bag probably bought online. You people always try to look like you belong in premium cabins. You people. The phrase hung in the recycled cabin air like toxic fumes. Zara's phone buzzed insistently. Multiple notifications flashed across the lock screen. Emergency board call, 15 minutes. London route review, urgent. Aero Global Legal, priority call. She declined all the calls with steady fingers. Ma'am, Jessica continued, I'm going to need you to move to your actual seat. Economy is toward the back of the aircraft. My actual seat is 1B, Zara responded quietly. As clearly printed on my boarding pass. A boarding pass that could be fraudulent. Devon zoomed in with his phone, capturing every micro-expression. His audience had swelled to 847 viewers. The story was spreading beyond his followers now. Aviation workers, civil rights advocates, and travel influencers were sharing the stream. A gate agent appeared at the aircraft door, radio crackling with urgency. We have a seating dispute in first class, requesting supervisor assistance. That won't be necessary, Karen announced. We're handling it internally. But Zara had reached into her briefcase again, withdrawing a tablet device. Corporate logos were visible on the loading screen, aviation industry symbols that meant nothing to most passengers but would be recognizable to airline professionals. 15 minutes to departure, came another announcement. Jessica pointed toward the back of the plane. Ma'am, you need to move now or we'll have to involve security. I'd prefer to stay in my assigned seat, Zara replied, her fingers moving across the tablet screen with practiced efficiency. Your assigned seat is in economy. This is first class. I understand the difference, Zara said simply. The confrontation had drawn the attention of every passenger in first class. Some were recording discreetly. Others looked away uncomfortably. A few seemed to approve of Jessica's actions. Devon's stream had become a real-time documentary of discrimination at 35,000 feet. His viewer count approached 200 as people shared the link across social media platforms. But none of them knew they were witnessing the first act of a corporate drama that would reshape airline policies across the industry. 15 minutes to departure. All passengers must be seated for final safety checks. The announcement crackled through the cabin as Purser David Brooke approached from the front galley. At 35, David had worked international flights for 8 years and prided himself on maintaining order. He'd received the gate agent's radio call about a seating dispute requiring supervisor intervention. Devon's live stream had exploded across social media. The viewer count climbed past 1,500 as travel bloggers, aviation workers, and civil rights advocates shared the feed. Comments flooded faster than he could read. This is discrimination in real time. Get the captain involved. Where's airline management? Document everything. What seems to be the issue here? David asked, his tone professionally neutral, but his body language clearly favoring the crew. Jessica straightened her shoulders. This passenger is occupying a first-class seat with questionable documentation. She's refused multiple requests to verify her payment method. I've shown my boarding pass and credit card, Zara replied calmly. Both are legitimate. David examined Zara's documents with theatrical scrutiny. The boarding pass was clearly valid. Seat 1B, first class, properly printed with Transatlantic Airways logos. But something in his expression suggested he'd already made his decision. "Ma'am, sometimes there are computer glitches with seat assignments," he said carefully. "We have several available seats in premium economy that would be more appropriate." The coded language wasn't lost on anyone. Devon captured every word, his phone steady despite his racing heart. His audience had swollen to 2,100 viewers. "My seat assignment is correct," Zara stated firmly. "There's no computer glitch." An uncomfortable murmur rippled through the first-class cabin. The businessman in 2A was openly staring now. The elderly woman in 1C had lowered her magazine completely. A couple in row 3 was whispering urgently. "Sir," called a voice from the economy, "are we going to be delayed because of this?" David's jaw tightened. Passenger complaints about delays meant corporate reports, on-time performance metrics, and potential disciplinary action. "Ma'am," he addressed Zara with growing firmness, "I'm going to need you to cooperate. We have a schedule to maintain." Zara's phone buzzed again. The caller ID flashed, "Aero Global CEO Office, Emergency." She glanced at the screen, then declined the call without explanation. Karen Mitchell moved closer, effectively boxing Zara into her seat. "We've been very patient, but this disruption is affecting other passengers." "What disruption?" Zara asked. "I'm sitting quietly in my assigned seat." "You're questioning crew authority," Jessica interjected. "That's disruptive behavior under federal aviation regulations." Devon's stream had become a phenomenon. Aviation journalists were monitoring the feed now. The hashtag #transatlantic discrimination was trending nationally. Major travel influencers with millions of followers had begun sharing clips. A ground agent appeared at the aircraft door, speaking urgently into his radio. "We need station management at Gate 23. Priority response requested." David's radio crackled. "Purser Brook, what's your status? We're showing boarding delays." "Minor seating issue," David replied. "Should be resolved momentarily." But the situation was spiraling beyond his control. Devon's live stream had reached 3,200 viewers. Screenshots of Zara's valid boarding pass were circulating online. Aviation workers were commenting with insider knowledge about proper procedures. 12 minutes to departure," the captain announced, frustration evident in his voice. A new figure appeared at the cabin door. Station manager Robert Hayes, 43 years old with 20 years of airline experience. His presence meant the situation had escalated to corporate-level crisis management. "What's happening here?" Robert demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. David quickly briefed him, carefully framing the narrative. "Passenger dispute over seat assignment. Potential documentation issues." Robert examined Zara's documents himself. The boarding pass was undeniably legitimate. The credit card matched her ID perfectly. His confusion was visible. "These documents appear to be in order," he said carefully. "Appearances can be deceiving," Jessica replied boldly. "I've seen sophisticated fraud before." Zara's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID read, "Emergency Board Meeting, London Route." The screen showed 17 missed calls from various corporate numbers. She answered this call briefly. "I'm unavailable right now. Please delay the route assessment." "Yes, the entire transatlantic evaluation." The conversation was quiet, but Jake Morrison in seat 2C was close enough to hear. He was a pilot for a competing airline and recognized corporate aviation terminology when he heard it. Devon's audience had grown to 4,500 viewers. Major news outlets were starting to monitor the stream. The story was breaking beyond travel circles into mainstream social media. "Ma'am," Robert addressed Zara, "to resolve this quickly, we'd be happy to upgrade you to our premium economy section. More legroom, complimentary beverages." "I've already paid for first class," Zara replied. "Why would I accept a downgrade?" "Sometimes accommodations are necessary for everyone's comfort," Karen suggested, glancing meaningfully at the other first-class passengers. The implication was clear. Zara's presence was making other passengers uncomfortable. A teenage passenger in economy had started recording on TikTok. Her video began gaining traction immediately. "Y'all see this airline discrimination happening live? This is crazy." Security personnel appeared at the boarding gate, 2 airport police officers responding to reports of a disturbance. Their presence raised the stakes dramatically. 10 minutes to departure. This is your final boarding call." The pressure was mounting from multiple directions. Other passengers were grumbling about delays. The crew was increasingly aggressive. Security was positioning themselves for potential intervention. David made a decision. "Ma'am, I'm giving you one final opportunity to relocate voluntarily. Otherwise, we'll have to involve law enforcement." "Law enforcement for what crime?" Zara asked. "Sitting in my paid seat with valid documents?" "Disrupting flight operations," Jessica supplied quickly. Devon's stream had become must-watch content. Aviation industry insiders were commenting in real time, "This is textbook discrimination. Transatlantic is violating their own policies. Someone needs to call corporate." But none of the viewers knew they were watching a corporate executive being discriminated against by her own employees. Jake Morrison, the pilot in 2C, leaned forward slightly. Something about Zara's phone calls nagged at him. The aviation terminology, the casual mention of route assessment, the corporate caller IDs he'd glimpsed. Zara opened her laptop bag fully for the first time, revealing professional documents inside. Aviation industry reports were visible, along with what appeared to be performance evaluations and route analysis data. 8 minutes to departure, came another announcement. "Ground crew, prepare for door closure." Robert Hayes was sweating now. Delayed departures meant corporate investigations, passenger compensation, and potential crew discipline. But the passenger seemed legitimate, despite his crew's insistence otherwise. "Ma'am?" He tried one more time. "What would it take to resolve this situation amicably?" Zara looked around the cabin, at Jessica's smug expression, at Karen's crossed arms, at David's impatient posture, at the security officers waiting in the background. "I think," she said quietly, "you should call your corporate headquarters. Immediately." The words carried weight that nobody quite understood yet, but Jake Morrison's eyes widened slightly. Corporate headquarters, route assessments, emergency board meetings. The pieces were starting to connect in his mind, but he couldn't quite believe what he was thinking. Devon's audience had reached 16,800 viewers. The story was viral now, spreading across all major social media platforms. But the biggest revelation was still to come. 7 minutes to departure. Final boarding call for all passengers. The announcement seemed to trigger something in Zara Johnson. She reached into her laptop bag with deliberate precision and withdrew a corporate ID holder, premium leather with gold aviation wings embossed on the front. "Robert," she said, addressing the station manager by name, though they'd never been introduced. "I think you should see this before you involve law enforcement." She handed him a single corporate identification badge. Robert glanced down and his professional composure shattered. His eyes widened, then narrowed as he read the card twice. David Brooke leaned over to look, his mouth falling open in disbelief. "What's it say?" Devon whispered to his live stream audience of 7,100 viewers. The comments were moving too fast to read. "What's on the ID? Zoom in! Tell us what happened!" Robert looked up at Zara, then at his crew, then back at the ID. His voice came out strangled. This says you're Zara Johnson, Senior Vice President of Airline Operations, Aero Global Holdings," she finished calmly. The first-class cabin fell silent except for the hum of auxiliary power and air conditioning. Jessica's face went through a spectrum of emotions: confusion, disbelief, then dawning horror. That's not possible. Aero Global? Jake Morrison, the pilot in seat 2C, leaned forward sharply. He knew that name. Every aviation professional knew that name. The corporate giant that owned 40% of the airline industry worldwide. David Brooke felt his knees go weak. Aero Global owns They own Transatlantic Airways. 68% ownership stake, Zara confirmed matter-of-factly. Acquired in 2019 as part of our global expansion strategy. Jake Morrison's pilot training kicked in as he processed the corporate hierarchy. Aero Global Holdings owned Transatlantic Airways, which meant this woman wasn't just any corporate executive. She was Robert's boss's boss's boss. Devon's live stream exploded. The viewer count shot past 9,000 as people shared frantically across platforms. Comments flooded in from aviation industry insiders. "She's the VP of Aero Global? Those flight attendants are so fired. This is the plot twist of the century. She literally owns their airline." But Zara wasn't finished. Not even close. She pulled out her phone and held it so everyone nearby could see the lock screen. 23 missed calls from Aero Global CEO office, 15 text messages from Board of Directors Emergency, 8 voicemails from Legal Department Priority, and multiple notifications from Route Profitability Review, London. "I've been declining emergency calls for the past hour," she said conversationally, scrolling through the notifications. "Calls about the transatlantic route profitability assessment I was conducting on this flight." Robert's face had gone completely white. "Route profitability assessment?" "Standard procedure. I fly our routes regularly to evaluate operational efficiency, customer service standards, crew performance, and overall passenger experience." Zara's voice remained eerily calm. This was supposed to be an anonymous assessment flight. The words hit the crew like physical blows. Jessica grabbed the galley counter for support. "You see," Zara continued, "Aero Global has been considering several strategic options for our transatlantic division. Route optimization, crew restructuring, or," she paused meaningfully, "complete operational overhaul." Karen Mitchell, who had been silent since the ID reveal, found her voice. This was a test?" "No," Zara replied, her tone growing colder. "This was me trying to fly to London for a board meeting. The test was how transatlantic employees treat passengers when they think no one important is watching. You failed spectacularly." Devon's audience had swelled to 12,500 viewers. Aviation journalists were now monitoring multiple streams. Major news outlets had received tips. The story was breaking beyond social media into traditional aviation trade publications. "Channel 7 aviation reporter is requesting an interview," Devon announced, reading his notifications live. "This is insane." Robert Hayes was already calculating the corporate catastrophe unfolding. Delayed flights, discrimination complaints, viral videos, and now a senior executive from their parent company documenting everything. Marcus Williams, an off-duty pilot deadheading in seat 4A, had been quietly observing the situation. As a black aviator with 12 years of experience, he'd witnessed discrimination from both sides. He pulled out his phone and began recording as backup documentation. "Ma'am," Robert's voice was barely above a whisper, "I cannot begin to apologize for what happened here." "Apologies aren't enough," Zara replied. "We need to discuss the systematic failures that led to this incident." She touched her phone screen. "I should probably take one of these emergency calls now." She pressed a callback for Aero Global CEO office. The phone rang twice before a harried voice answered. "Zara, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for over an hour. The board is in an emergency session. What's your status on the transatlantic assessment?" Everyone in first class could hear both sides of the conversation. Zara had deliberately activated speakerphone. "Michael, I'm still on transatlantic flight 447 conducting the assessment. We have a significant operational problem." "How significant?" CEO Michael Chang's voice was tight with executive anxiety. "Systematic discrimination, physical confrontation with passengers, fraudulent application of security protocols, false imprisonment threats, all perpetrated by crew members. And yes, it's all been documented." Silence on the other end of the call. "Michael, are you there?" "Jesus Christ, Zara. Documented how? Live streamed to over 13,000 viewers, going viral across all platforms. Zara glanced at Devon. Aviation trade publications are covering it. It's becoming a major news story. 13,000 people watched transatlantic employees discriminate against you. 13,000 people watched your subsidiary's employees accuse me of credit card fraud and threaten to have me arrested for sitting in my legitimate first-class seat. The silence on the CEO's end was deafening. Jessica had sunk into a jump seat, her career flashing before her eyes. Michael, are you still there? Christ, Zara, are you injured? Do you need medical attention? Legal is going absolutely insane here. They're talking about federal discrimination lawsuits, DOT investigations, civil rights violations. I'm unharmed, but we need emergency board consultation. This fundamentally changes our transatlantic operational assessment. Karen Mitchell was silently crying now, realizing the magnitude of her career-ending mistake. The liability exposure is enormous, Zara continued into the phone, ensuring everyone could hear. Federal discrimination lawsuits average $340,000 in aviation cases. But this isn't just about financial liability. This is about corporate culture, brand reputation, and operational integrity. What's your preliminary recommendation? Michael's voice was tight with corporate crisis management. Complete crew restructuring, immediate termination of involved personnel, comprehensive bias training for all customer-facing staff, new discrimination reporting protocols, independent oversight of crew performance. Devon's viewers had grown to 15,800. The story was trending nationally now. Aero Global Discrimination had joined #transatlantic discrimination as top hashtags. Or, Zara continued, we consider divesting the transatlantic division entirely. Sell it off to avoid inherited liability and reputational damage. Robert Hayes nearly collapsed. Selling the division would mean thousands of job losses across the airline. The board wants an immediate recommendation, Michael said. They'll have it. But Michael, I need full executive authority to handle this ground situation. The longer these streams live, the worse it gets for everyone. You have complete authority. Whatever you need. The stock price is already taking a hit from social media coverage. Thank you. I'll call back in 30 minutes with a damage assessment and recommendations. Zara ended the call and surveyed the first-class cabin. Jessica was sobbing quietly. David looked physically sick. Karen stared at the floor in defeat. Robert was frantically typing on his phone, probably alerting his own chain of command. Jake Morrison, the observing pilot, approached carefully. Ma'am, I'm an airline pilot myself. What I witnessed here was completely unacceptable. If you need additional witness testimony, thank you. That would be helpful. Marcus Williams also stood up. Ma'am, I'm an off-duty pilot. I recorded the last 20 minutes as additional documentation. This behavior has no place in aviation. Patricia Hendricks, an elderly passenger in 1C, surprised everyone by speaking up. Young lady, I'm 74 years old, and I've seen discrimination evolve over decades. What you handled with such grace, that takes real strength. Thank you, Zara replied sincerely. Devon announced to his massive audience, 17,000 viewers just witnessed corporate accountability happening in real time. This is what justice looks like when it's documented and broadcast live. But Zara had one more revelation. She opened her laptop bag completely, revealing thick folders marked Confidential Transatlantic Operational Review. Multiple documents were visible. Route profitability analysis, crew performance metrics, customer satisfaction assessment, and strategic recommendations. These are my assessment materials, she explained, pulling out the official Aero Global letterhead. I was supposed to file my operational review tomorrow morning. Under crew performance and customer service standards, I had planned to rate transatlantic as satisfactory or needs minor improvement. She held up her tablet, now displaying an official evaluation form. Instead, I'm documenting systematic discrimination, immediate restructuring required, and crew performance unacceptable, recommend complete management overhaul. The cabin was dead silent except for the continuous notification sounds from Devon's phone as the story spread across every major social media platform. 5 minutes to departure, the captain announced over the intercom, unaware of the corporate earthquake happening in his first-class cabin. Actually, Zara said, looking directly at Robert, I think we need to discuss what happens next before this aircraft moves anywhere. The twist was complete. The victim had become the judge. The discriminated passenger was revealed as the ultimate corporate authority, and 18,000 people were watching justice unfold at 35,000 feet in real time. 4 minutes to departure. Ground crew, prepare for possible delay notification. The captain's voice crackled through the intercom, but the words felt surreal against the corporate meltdown unfolding in first class. Devon's live stream had reached 21,000 viewers. The hashtag #AeroGlobalDiscrimination was trending in 8 countries. Aviation industry publications were publishing breaking news alerts. Zara Johnson stood in the aisle like the eye of a hurricane, surrounded by the chaos she'd unleashed with a single corporate ID badge. Jessica Walsh, she said, her voice carrying the full weight of executive authority for the first time. Flight attendant for 6 years, annual salary, 38,000 plus performance bonuses. Last review, satisfactory with noted improvement areas in cultural sensitivity. Jessica's head snapped up from her hands. How do you know my personnel file? Because I oversee operational budgets for all AeroGlobal subsidiaries, Zara replied, pulling out her tablet. I have access to performance records, disciplinary reports, and customer complaint databases across our entire fleet network. Robert Hayes watched in horror as Zara's fingers moved across the corporate interface with practiced efficiency. 7 formal complaints filed against you in the past 18 months, Zara continued, reading from her screen. All involving allegations of discriminatory behavior toward passengers of color. HR classified them as unsubstantiated due to lack of corroborating witnesses. Devon zoomed in on Zara's tablet, though the details were too small for his 22,000 viewers to read clearly. The comments exploded. She has access to everything. Corporate receipts in real time. Those complaint records are damning. This woman is unstoppable. Tonight, Zara said, looking directly into Devon's camera, we have 22,000 witnesses. Marcus Williams, the off-duty pilot, had been quietly documenting everything from his professional perspective. As a black aviator, he understood both the aviation industry's challenges and the importance of this moment. Ma'am, Marcus addressed Zara, what do you need from fellow aviation professionals? This behavior violates every code of conduct we're trained to uphold. Document everything. Your witness statements will be crucial for FAA investigations. The Department of Transportation takes discrimination in aviation very seriously, especially when it involves systematic patterns. Patricia Hendricks, the elderly passenger, was on her 4th phone call. At 74, she had become an unlikely social media coordinator, contacting her granddaughter who worked for a major news network. Dear, Patricia called to Zara, Channel 7 News is sending a crew to interview you when we land, and the CNN aviation correspondent wants a statement. Thank you, Patricia. Media accountability is important. Zara's phone buzzed with an incoming call marked Transatlantic Corporate Legal Emergency. She answered immediately, keeping the conversation on speaker. Zara, this is Amanda Rodriguez from Transatlantic Legal. We've been monitoring the social media situation. The video has been shared over 200,000 times across platforms. Amanda, I need immediate legal guidance on federal aviation discrimination statutes, civil rights violations under 49 U.S.C. 40127, and potential class action exposure. We're assembling a crisis management team, but Zara, this could trigger DOT investigations, FAA enforcement actions, and congressional oversight hearings. David Brooke, the purser, had gone completely pale. Congressional hearings meant industry-wide scrutiny, regulatory changes, and career-ending consequences for involved personnel. The social media team reports major news outlets picking up the story, Amanda continued. The NAACP issued a statement calling for a federal investigation, We're looking at potential systematic discrimination claims across multiple routes. Devon's viewer count hit 25,000. He was struggling to read comments and notifications. DOT investigation incoming. Congressional hearings mentioned. This is bigger than one incident. Systematic discrimination exposed. Karen Mitchell finally found her voice. This is destroying innocent people's careers. We were just following company culture. Company culture? Zara's voice carried ice-cold precision. Show me the transatlantic policy manual section that instructs crew to accuse black passengers of credit card fraud. Silence. Show me the training that teaches you to demand additional verification from passengers based on race. More silence. Karen Mitchell, head flight attendant for 12 years. Your performance file shows 3 diversity training sessions completed. Apparently none of them took effect. Amanda's voice continued through the speaker. Legal wants to know your assessment of damages. We're looking at individual discrimination claims, systemic bias allegations, and potential FAA enforcement penalties. Conservative estimate. Individual settlements average $340,000 in aviation discrimination cases. Multiply that by potential class action plaintiffs across our route network. Add FAA fines of up to $25,000 per violation. Factor in lost revenue from boycotts and negative publicity. Robert Hayes was calculating numbers in his head, his face growing ashen with each figure. But Amanda, Zara continued, the real cost isn't financial. It's operational integrity, brand reputation, and regulatory compliance. This incident exposes systematic failures in hiring, training, and oversight. Jake Morrison, the pilot observer, leaned forward. Ma'am, as an aviation professional, I need to ask, how widespread is this problem across the industry? More common than the public realizes, less documented than tonight's incident. Aviation has diverse challenges that predate deregulation. Devon's stream had become required viewing for aviation industry insiders. Comments from pilots, flight attendants, and airline executives flooded in. This happens regularly. Finally, someone with power to change things. Every airline needs accountability. Document and share everything. Zara opened her laptop and connected to the aircraft's Wi-Fi. Her fingers moved rapidly across multiple corporate applications. I'm filing real-time incident reports with Aero Global Safety, Transatlantic Operations, FAA Whistleblower Protection, and DOT Civil Rights Office, she announced. Each report filing sent automatic notifications to hundreds of corporate executives, federal regulators, and oversight committees. Robert Hayes, Zara addressed the station manager directly. You have authority to implement immediate corrective actions. What's your plan? Robert was sweating profusely. Immediate crew removal, full investigation, policy review. Specifics. I need actionable commitments with timelines. Jessica Walsh and Karen Mitchell terminated immediately. David Brooks suspended pending investigation. Comprehensive bias training. Mandatory for all customer service staff within 60 days. New complaint reporting system with external oversight. Timeline for bias training? 60 days for all flight crews, 90 days for ground staff. External oversight provider? We'll research qualified organizations. I'll provide a list of approved vendors. This isn't optional. It's mandatory compliance for maintaining Aero Global partnership. Devon announced to his massive audience, 27,000 viewers watching corporate accountability happen in real time. This is what systemic change looks like when it's demanded by someone with actual power. Patricia held up her phone. Dear, my granddaughter says this story is breaking on cable news. CNN, Fox Business, MSNBC, they're all covering it. The implications were staggering. A single incident of discrimination had become a national conversation about aviation industry bias, corporate accountability, and the power of social media documentation. 2 minutes to departure, came another announcement. Ground crew, implement delay protocols. But nobody was thinking about departure times anymore. The aircraft had become ground zero for an industry reckoning that would reshape airline policies nationwide. "Amanda," Zara said into her phone, "patch me through to Aero Global's crisis management team. We need coordination across all subsidiaries. This incident exposes vulnerabilities that affect our entire operation." "Connecting you now." Within seconds, Zara was on a conference call with senior executives from across the aviation industry. Her tablet displayed real-time updates, stock prices, social media metrics, regulatory notifications, and media coverage analysis. "Robert," she said, ending the corporate call, "you have 1 hour to implement immediate corrective actions before my next board call. The entire industry is watching how transatlantic responds." The corporate showdown had reached its climax. Federal investigations were inevitable. Careers were ending in real time. Industry-wide policy changes were being drafted by lawyers and executives across the aviation sector, and 28,000 people were witnessing accountability being demanded and delivered at the highest levels of corporate America. Captain Thomas Rivera finally emerged from the cockpit. At 52, with 28 years of commercial aviation experience, he'd been monitoring the situation through crew communications. The flight delay was now approaching 40 minutes, but this was no ordinary passenger dispute. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice commanded immediate attention, "I'm Captain Rivera. I've been briefed on the situation, and I want to personally apologize for the unacceptable behavior of my crew." Devon's live stream captured every word. 31,000 viewers watched the captain address the discrimination directly. Effective immediately, Flight Attendant Jessica Walsh and Head Flight Attendant Karen Mitchell are terminated from Transatlantic Airways. Purser David Brooke is suspended pending full investigation. The cabin erupted in murmurs. Devon's comments exploded. "Captain taking charge. Immediate terminations. Finally, some leadership. This is what accountability looks like." Jessica Walsh gathered her belongings in stunned silence. 6 years of aviation career ending in viral disgrace. Karen Mitchell followed, her 12-year tenure concluded by 30 minutes of discriminatory behavior captured on live stream. Robert Hayes stepped forward with official documentation. "Ms. Johnson, on behalf of Transatlantic Airways, I'm issuing a formal corporate apology. This incident represents a complete failure of our values and training protocols." He held up his tablet, displaying an official statement being posted simultaneously to company websites and social media accounts. Transatlantic Airways. Corporate statement. Today, unacceptable discrimination occurred on Flight 447. The crew members responsible have been terminated immediately. We are implementing comprehensive reforms, including mandatory bias training, diverse hiring requirements, and enhanced passenger protection protocols. Discrimination has no place in aviation or our society. Zara reviewed the statement on her own device. "That's a good start, Robert, but real change requires systematic implementation, not just public statements." "What specifically do you need?" Captain Rivera asked. "First, mandatory unconscious bias training for all customer-facing personnel. Not online modules. Comprehensive in-person training with quarterly assessments and annual recertification." Done. Second, diverse hiring requirements for all supervisory positions. Your leadership team must reflect your passenger demographics. Agreed. Third, an independent passenger advocacy system. Direct reporting to Aero Global with 72-hour investigation requirements for all discrimination complaints. I'll coordinate implementation with corporate immediately. Marcus Williams, the off-duty pilot, stepped forward. "Captain, I'd like to volunteer for the Bias Training Development Committee. As a black aviator, I can provide perspective on industry challenges." "Excellent. We need diverse voices in leadership." Patricia Hendricks, still coordinating media outreach, received another call. "Zara, dear, the NAACP wants to partner with Aero Global on industry-wide policy development. They're impressed with how you're handling this." "That partnership would be valuable for sustainable change," Devon announced to his audience. 33,000 viewers just witnessed immediate corporate accountability. Terminations, policy changes, and industry partnerships happening in real time. Jake Morrison, the observing pilot, approached Zara. Ma'am, I fly for United. Would Aero Global be willing to share your new protocols industry-wide? This problem exists across all carriers. Absolutely. Aviation safety includes passenger dignity and equal treatment. We'll make our training materials available to any airline committed to implementation. Captain Rivera made an announcement to the entire aircraft. Ladies and gentlemen, we've experienced an unacceptable delay due to crew misconduct. That crew has been removed and replaced. We'll be departing shortly with our reserve crew, but I wanted you to know that justice was served today. Spontaneous applause erupted throughout the cabin. Passengers who had witnessed the discrimination felt vindicated. Those who had remained silent during the incident felt relieved that action was taken. Robert Hayes coordinated with ground operations. Captain, reserve crew is boarding now. We can depart in 15 minutes if you're comfortable proceeding. Ms. Johnson, Captain Rivera addressed Zara directly. Are you comfortable continuing this flight? We can arrange alternative transportation if you prefer. I'll continue to London for my board meeting, but I'll be filing my operational assessment during the flight. Of course, and ma'am, thank you for handling this with such professionalism. You've probably changed our industry forever. Devon's final live stream announcement reached an audience of 35,000. Flight 447 is preparing for departure after the most dramatic corporate accountability session in aviation history. Discrimination was called out, documented, and corrected in real time. The reserve crew boarded efficiently, a diverse team led by senior flight attendant Maria Santos, who had 15 years of experience and specialized training in cultural competency. Good evening, everyone, Maria announced. I'm Maria Santos, your senior flight attendant. We're honored to serve you tonight and committed to providing excellent service to every passenger. Her emphasis on every passenger was intentional and appreciated. Patricia approached Zara one final time. Dear, what you accomplished tonight, transforming humiliation into industry reform, that's real leadership. Thank you, Patricia. But the real work starts tomorrow. Implementation matters more than announcements. As the aircraft finally pushed back from the gate, 47 minutes late but carrying the seeds of systemic change, Zara opened her laptop to complete her operational assessment. Under crew performance, she typed, Initial failure requiring immediate restructuring. Reserve crew performance, exemplary. Recommend reserve team protocols as standard training model. Under incident response, she wrote, Corporate accountability protocols are effective. Captain leadership is excellent. Station management responsive to crisis intervention. The flight that began with discrimination had become a catalyst for industry transformation, witnessed by tens of thousands and documented for lasting change. 6 months later, the aviation industry had fundamentally changed. Devon's live stream reached 4.2 million views across all platforms, becoming the most watched airline accountability video in history. The hashtag #AeroGlobalDiscrimination had evolved into #AviationEquality, inspiring similar confrontations of bias across the transportation sector. Zara Johnson was promoted to Executive Vice President of Corporate Culture and Equity at Aero Global Holdings. She now oversees diversity, inclusion, and passenger rights initiatives across 847 aircraft serving 6 continents. Her operational assessment from Flight 447 became the industry standard for bias detection and response protocols. Devon Martinez parlayed his viral documentation into a full scholarship at Columbia Journalism School. He now covers transportation equity for major news outlets, proving that one person with a camera and courage can expose systematic injustice. His reporting has led to policy changes at 12 major airlines. Captain Thomas Rivera was promoted to Chief of Flight Operations Training. His immediate response to discrimination became a case study taught in aviation management programs worldwide. He learned that true leadership means taking action when others stay silent. Patricia Hendricks became an unlikely civil rights advocate at 74. Her media coordination during the incident led to a permanent role with the NAACP Aviation Equity Initiative. She proved that allyship has no expiration date and that every voice matters in demanding justice. Marcus Williams was appointed to the FAA's Diversity Advisory Committee. His witness testimony and professional advocacy helped establish federal aviation discrimination reporting requirements. As a black pilot, he transformed personal experience into industry-wide protective policies. Jessica Walsh struggled to find employment in customer service after her viral termination. Her discriminatory behavior followed her across background checks and social media searches. She eventually completed voluntary bias training and now works in warehouse logistics, away from public interaction. Her story became a cautionary tale about the permanent consequences of prejudice in the digital age. The transatlantic airways transformation exceeded all expectations. Anonymous discrimination complaints dropped 87%. Customer satisfaction scores increased 43% among passengers of color. Employee retention improved as toxic management was replaced with inclusive leadership. These real-life stories demonstrate that quiet strength often achieves more than loud protests. When we document discrimination, we create accountability. When we demand change from positions of power, we get results that ripple across entire industries. The touching stories from Flight 447 remind us that everyday courage can transform systematic bias. Black stories matter because they expose hidden injustices. Black voices, when amplified by positions of authority, create change that protects future generations. Life stories like Zara's show us that preparation meets opportunity in unexpected moments. Her education, professional position, and strategic thinking turned a moment of humiliation into industry-wide transformation, affecting millions of travelers. Most importantly, this story proves that justice doesn't always require lawsuits or legislation. Sometimes it requires someone brave enough to document the truth, someone powerful enough to demand change, and someone wise enough to choose reform over revenge. Real power isn't about getting even at 35,000 feet. It's about ensuring the next passenger never faces the turbulence you experienced. Have you experienced discrimination while traveling? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice creates accountability in transportation. Your experience protects other travelers. Subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more accounts where quiet strength transforms unjust systems. Ring the notification bell because every documented injustice becomes industry accountability. Every shared story builds community. Every view demands safer travel for everyone. When we speak truth to corporate power, policies change. When we demand equality, systems respond. When we create change together, the skies become friendlier for all.